Good morning, good evening, and wherever the sun may find you. My name is Walt, and this is Coffee and Concepts on Keystroke Medium. So excited. This is our first show for 2021, and the only reason I'm this hyped up is because I've had like 9 cups of coffee. But that's what happens when you work at night. You know, you start in the middle of one day, end up in the middle of another, and it's caffeine and book dreams all the time. So thank you for sharing a little bit of your morning or wherever, whatever in the time stream. What Josh Hayes says from FaceSpace. Hello, good morning. We normally come to you on a Tuesday, but we decided Thursday because weird things were going on this week. Wonder how that happened. In any case, welcome to the show. And this morning, for our coffee part of the show, we wanted to talk a little bit about the sugar. So not everybody likes coffee the way that I like coffee. I like my coffee flavored. So if we were ever to pan down the camera and you'll see my coffee, I drink it black, no cream, no sugar. I want to taste the coffee. I usually get single origin coffees so that you can taste certain highlights and notes from the different areas around the planet where these coffees are from. So that being the case, it's a lot of fun to try those coffees from different areas and see if you can discern the different flavors. Here, some people might not exactly like the taste of a straight Ethiopian coffee, which has a blueberry taste, or Sumatra, which has an earthy, almost floral taste. They might want to add a little something. So on the natural side of things, we have basic sugar, obviously, represented by our little sugar cubes and granulated sugar down at the bottom, which is simple, easy, find them at most grocery stores. And you won't have any headaches or problem getting that in there. James McCormick. Hello, good morning. Then you're James says, I'm not wearing pants. Lo siento por ti. William Joseph Roberts saying good morning and coming into the chat. So, guys, we're talking about sweeteners today and what some people put in their coffee to take some of the bite out of the bitter. So we just were talking about regular old granulated cane sugar. And then also in that we have some brown sugar as well. Some people might go with that. And even though it takes a little bit more stirring to kind of break it up and get it in there, it will do the job. German rock sugar is something that I had recently discovered. My wife is a huge fan of tea, and at some of the shops that she has bought her tea. Nada, give me milk grade. I assume you're talking about the coffee. Right on, brother. Me too. Yeah. My wife is a huge fan of tea, and she goes in for some of these shops that have some really interesting sweetening choices. And one of them is this like almost like candied sugar. It's crystallized sugar, like in little tiny stone form, and you just drop a couple in your coffee. They're pretty quick to dissolve, and that's fun and cool that way too. Then, of course, down below some of that German stuff, you have some granulated. You guys are awesome this morning. I love this. James McCormick saying only Walt can make sugar look like hard drugs. It's not me, man. It's the stock art. I'm just the face of the whole thing. Yeah, but granulated honey, really, really great. Really usually even keel tasting. If you don't want something so overtly sweet, it's going to really overpower your coffee and ruin the experience. A little bit of honey or granulated honey and can sweeten things up and take some of the bite out without losing without losing the experience of the coffee that you're trying to taste. And so a lot of these natural sweeteners are really good for just taking some of the hint of bitterness off. You usually see this with a medium to light roasted coffee. I'm behaving, I swear. That's got to be Leo, the ultimate Facebook user. If it's not, hit me in the comments. Let me know who you is. But usually it's the medium roast and the light roast that most people have a tendency to add a sweetener to. Because what happens is in the other than my dog stealing the show because he's drinking. So anyway, bitter. Those blends are bitter. Light and medium roasts, they have a tendency to be much more bitter than the darker roasts, which are a little more smoky. So people have a tendency to sweeten them. That being the case, we're going to enter into our concept for today, and that is sweetening up your writing. So obviously we've had some problems in the United States in the last few days, and a lot of people are angry and, throwing their anger and vitriol out on Facebook. And, over the past year, there's been a lot of finger pointing as certain things being represented or misrepresented or what have you. And in a lot of those cases, it really doesn't, I've never seen a need to try and get certain details right, because I really, even though I don't really see him as this major driving force, I am of the Will Wheaton school of humanity, and in that he has said in frequent things that he's done, just don't be a dick. And I think that's worked out pretty well. I try in my own life to be James, vitriol on the internet? That doesn't sound like the internet I know. You need to give me the address of the internet you're hanging out with, because I need to take a vacation there. But Will Wheaton, and several of the shows that he's done, and as a big representative of geek culture, has always said, just don't be a dick. And it costs nothing to be kind. So with that being said, the other side of that coin is when I went and enlisted into the United States Army many, many moons ago, when we had those pointed hats and ran and rode through the streets yelling about the British, they surgically removed our feelings. So I'm not really sure how I feel about our concept today, but I'm gonna just dip my toe in the water and we'll see where it takes us. So in some cases, there have been some people who have let me know that they've used sensitivity readers and sensitivity editors. And I was just like, ¿Qué es esto? What is this thing you speak of? So a sensitivity reader or editor is a person who goes through your manuscript and checks it for the content and message to see if it's going to offend anybody. And by offend, I don't necessarily mean like it's being mean to people. I mean concepts, or certain concepts are misconstrued or incorrect. Racial stereotypes are balanced against how the race is perceived in certain cultures, cultural appropriation, cultural misappropriation. These are all aspects where James is like, you're being serious. Yes, this is an actual thing. I did not know about this until recently, within the last 6 months or so. So I've done my research. I've talked to a couple of sensitivity editors and sensitivity readers, and it's a thing. There was a thing not too long ago where a young high school student wore a dress to a high school dance. And the dress that she wore was from, I believe it was from China. And it offended a lot of people in America. A lot of Chinese Americans felt offended by the fact that she wore the dress and that she wasn't Chinese. And it was interesting because a couple of people who were against the reaction went out and actually went to places like Hong Kong and went to certain places in mainland China and asked, showing pictures of this young lady. What did you think of this? They didn't give a context. They just asked, what were your opinions? And in most cases, the people in China said, oh, I think she looks pretty. That was the most common reaction. When they told people that, this was causing quite a stir in America, it caused some confusion on the part of the people where the dress had hailed from that culture. So it offended people who felt that maybe the culture that they had descended from was being taken advantage of. But yet some people in that same culture didn't feel that way. So a sensitivity editor or reader who would have some basis in the culture or content that you're trying to convey, they would look over your manuscript and see whether or not it's culturally correct, whether you're getting certain nuances correct, whether or not those nuances are being represented properly and respectfully. Now, the thing is, some people will say if you're telling a good story, some of these things can be forgiven, and then some people will say you have to get it right all the time. As a person who routinely sits in on manuscripts involving military culture, I personally like to go a 50-50 approach. For example, recently somebody sent me a manuscript and they said, hey, what do you think of this? I read the excerpt and I said, the actual interesting, like the caption that you sent was very interesting, fun. The content is really good. The action is intense and fun. However, are you trying to be factually correct using the military culture that you're trying to portray, or are you trying to just are you really attached to this scene? After working with this person, we eventually reached a middle ground, and then they wrote that into the book, and that's how it's going to be released, and so forth and so on. A cultural or sensitivity editor would do the same thing for certain people of certain races, genders, religions, so forth and so on. They go through your manuscript and they see whether or not you're hitting all the right notes, and whether or not the notes that you aren't going to go back on, will that be offensive? Will some people take umbrage with it? Mostly I needed to get that line out because I just wanted to say the word umbrage. William Joseph Roberts was saying he did the same thing for another author on the case of veteran PTSD. Yeah. And that's the thing too. What one person might be very well versed in, another person might not. So is using a sensitivity or a cultural editor the right thing for you? I only know umbrage from Harry Potter. You got me there, James. Well, that's going to depend on what you're trying to convey, the audience that you're trying to reach, and whether or not you care what people are going to think of the work. If you have a well-researched manuscript that is entertaining, fun, and does a lot for the genre that you're writing in, a lot of the times a sensitivity editor might be redundant. However, if you're coming into a culture or wanting to write about a culture that interests you, or that you'd like to experience, but yet you don't have the means, motive, or wherewithal to actually get into the culture yourself, a sensitivity editor or maybe a content editor might not be a bad thing, because of the fact that you might not have all of the little nuances that might come with that particular subject matter. So, for example, you see Japanese swords and like an eyebrow length stick on my wall. Those aren't just there as decoration. From the time I was a very young teenager, I studied a very traditional Japanese martial art. I grew up learning Japanese. I've spent time overseas in various cultures where I've studied their martial arts. Um, uh, it's almost a part of my life for so long now that I can't think of my life without those things. So, am I qualified to talk about those experiences as if I'm a native? No. Am I qualified to talk about those experiences as somebody who's lived through them? Yes. So, would a sensitivity editor be needed if I wanted to write something about Japanese culture or history? Or not necessarily, because I've lived and worked in that culture. I've for decades. So, but if I was talking about China, where I've never lived, I don't speak the language, I might not have direct ties. If I can't spend copious amounts of time in a Chinese community or with the Chinese people, or fly over to China to experience some of the amazing things that culture has to offer, this kind of editor might not be a bad thing. So, is it a right thing? Is it a wrong thing? Not my thing to judge, but I thought it was a great subject to talk about for today, especially since we were talking about the sweet stuff. So if you need a sensitivity editor, or you feel you need a sensitivity editor, you could always go on Keystroke Medium Facebook group, start typing around. Maybe somebody knows somebody, and maybe can get you hooked up. That being the case, James is like, if I'm not offending people, I'm doing something wrong. That described most of my adult life until about 5 minutes ago, because I just want to drink my coffee and then go to bed. Speaking of going to bed, I'm going to put this show to bed by saying that don't forget, on Monday mornings, 11 a.m. Eastern Time, you got Josh, Scott, and Chuck doing the Keystroke Medium live show, where they have roundtable discussions and dissect interesting portions of the writing community with interesting guests. So check them out. Definitely get into the live chat for that, because they always have fun shenanigans and good times. William Joseph Roberts saying sleep is for the weak, which is why I'm still up. Obviously, Keystroke Mediums, Coffee and Concepts, normally on a Tuesday morning, but there was some wacky stuff going on this week, so we held it over for a little bit of a day. And then, hey, Jay Clifton Slater, hey, thank you for coming out, man. We were a sweet show. I see what you did there. We appreciate it. Lauren and Kayleen doing the writer's journey, where they dissects the various parts of the publishing experience for new and experienced writers. For the new writer, giving first glimpses of what it takes to break into the publishing, the area of publishing your own books and novels and games and whatever you might have. For the experienced, maybe you're just looking for another angle, a new spin on an old twist, and you come to the show and find what you find, and it's always a good discussion with them. Speaking of good discussions, don't forget Josh Gayu on YouTube doing long form storytelling analysis, where they really dissect deep into a matter and kind of pull out all the jiggly bits, so you guys can have a fun show and learn something at the same time. Speaking of YouTube, don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't already. And make sure to run over to KeyStrokeMedium.com, where you can get your own tasty little cup of coffee. Keystroke Medium coffee comes in several different blends. You got to try it. There's rumors Josh is going to be unleashing whole bean coffee, so you can grind your own at home too. So rock and roll, cops and robbers, Dunkin' Donuts, it's all good. Josh Hayes saying, great show. Thank you. I love the accolades, and we'll catch you next time on Keystroke Mediums, Coffee and Concepts.